Hey guys, Jessica here and welcome back. Today I'm going to be making a card using the Kat Scrappiness Stewart the Sloth stamp set. So I thought it would be fun to make a little scene for this guy. He's loving on his giant coffee cup and looking very peaceful with his cup of coffee. I'm going to stamp him onto a piece of scrap Gina 80-pound cardstock using some amalgam ink. And this ink is Copic friendly. And I'm just going to stamp him a couple times just to make that line image really nice and dark. To color him, I'm going to be using some Copics. That's why I use the Copic Safe ink. That way that black ink doesn't smear when I'm coloring. For his darker shadow areas of his body, I'm using a W6, which is a very warm gray. This is kind of my go-to gray colors. I'm going to blend that out with a W3 to create some highlights. Now these markers are kind of far from each other. You have a W6 and a W3. So it does take a little bit to blend them. You could also do the tip to tip technique where you take that W3 and touch the tip of that to the W6, and that'll give you a good medium color. For his face, I'm using some E's. I have an E43 and an E34. And I'm also going to use a little bit of E81. That's kind of what I scribbled there on the top right hand side. And then I add some pink to his cheeks and also eyelids just to add a little bit more color to his face. For the coffee cup, I'm using my favorite teal combination. I have the BG18, BG13, and a BG10. Also add a bit of coffee color to that coffee cup with the E43. And then for the steam, I'm going to add some color to it with a W0, W3, a little bit of a cool gray also, the C3. So pretty much very minimal colors. I don't think he needs a whole lot. He already has a whole lot of detail to him. And I'm going to fussy cut him out. And I'm just trimming right along that black line of the stamp image. And then I also like to use a marker, a black marker, to ink those edges. That way you don't see any of that white show through after you've fussy cut that image out. Kind of hides any mistakes that you might have made. So I used a light gray cardstock and ran that through with the wood frame die from Kat Scrappiness. And this is a really cool die because it cuts out the middle, so you just get a frame. Has such a light detail to it of that wood grain. It's very subtle. You can intensify it too by doing some inking over the top, but I'm going to leave it the way it is because I really like the way it looks with that light gray cardstock. The sentiment I'm going to be using today with this little sloth is from the Kat Scrappiness Let's Get Caffeinated stamp set. I thought it worked perfectly together. And this stamp says, "Life happens, coffee helps." But there's a bunch of different fun coffee sayings in this stamp set. Lots of different fonts too. I like the word art of this stamp set also. So it's just really fun. And I'm going to use this with some clear embossing ink and then heat emboss it with the alabaster embossing powder from British Monroe. You can also find that on the Kat Scrappiness website. Once my heat gun is really good and hot, I can go ahead and melt that. So the paper I'm using is from my stash. It's a kind of a melony pink color. It's very pretty. Almost a coral, I guess. And I also cut a notch out of it with one of the dies from the Crafter's Essentials 1 die set, and that's the square stitch die. But by using that, I got a nice square edge, so I didn't have to think about it. And since I'm making a scene card, that is going to be where I'm going to add some smaller details. But until then, I decided to ink up the edges of my sentiment. The first color I used wasn't quite dark enough. It really didn't do anything. So I go in with some Festive berries, and that helped darken the outer edges like I wanted it to. And then once I was done inking, I just take a microfiber cloth real quick and then rub off the extra ink that's over the top of that embossing sentiment. Now I can start adhering everything together. I'm going to start with the frame first from that wood frame die. Using my ATG, I just quickly add adhesive to the back and then pop it onto a top fold A2 sized card base. This is a Nina 110 pound. And now I'm going to add that insert, which fits perfectly into the middle of that wood frame because I had went ahead and die cut that wood frame from that coral pink cardstock. So I had an exact fit to match. I have a piece of yellow cardstock from my stash that I cut to fit, and that's going to act as my floor. But before I add Stewart, I decided to do a little bit of fun hand stamping using acrylic blocks. And these coffee beans are also from the Let's Get Caffeinated stamp set. There's 3 different sizes, so I grabbed 3 different colors of brownish ink. And I'm going to stamp those in that square to act as a wall art piece. This is just kind of something that I really like to do. I think it adds a little something to a very simple scene. So I added a few of those coffee beans, and now I'm going to add on Stewart to the bottom part, right on top of that yellow cardstock. I did add some of those green post-it notes to the sides of that square to act as a mask, but I thought I needed some more coffee beans. So I'm just going to add on some more, doing the same thing I did before, adding different colors of those browns with the different sizes of coffee beans. So it kind of looks like you have a dark, medium, and light roast of coffee beans. So also in the Let's Get Caffeinated stamp set, there's a small little heart, and I'm going to use that with some fossilized amber distress oxide ink to stamp right above those little coffee beans, and also onto the coffee cup that Stewart is holding, and to the right of that embossed sentiment, which didn't show up very well against that coral cardstock. So I'm going to cover that with a little bit of a teal die flag. This is a die also from the Crafters Essentials 1 die set, which it is very long and great for sentiments, but I'm going to chop it off to where it's just a little tiny flag to add some more color. I also used a heart again with the Festive berries and Peacock feathers to add some more color to that little square with the coffee beans in it, surrounding the fossilized amber heart. And as a final touch, I add some glossy accents to Stewart's mug, just where the heart is, so that stands out a bit more, and also to the steam that's coming up from the coffee. All right, you guys, that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed this. I think it's such a cute little card, and I really love the color combination that I used on this one. So go ahead and go to the Kat Scrappiness website to see more inspiration for Stewart the Sloth and any other dies or stamps that I used in this video. I will also have links below for your convenience. Thank you so much for joining me today. Subscribe if you have not already. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Meh, meh.